Hello, my name is Nigel Griffiths. I work at IBM in the UK. This video is about the IBM Cloud PowerVS service, which gives you access to a small AIX virtual machine for just £2 a day. We're going to have that AIX running on a POWER9 server in the IBM Cloud. We can also have IBM I and Linux on the same server if we want, but that's not the point of this video. And this very low price made me think again about AIX on the cloud. But what is PowerVS like? What are the steps you need to actually go through? How easy to actually get this going and access to AIX? Well, this session is aimed at reducing or removing the fear, uncertainty, doubt, the FUD, and give you the confidence to give it a try, well, hopefully today. I'm going to cover every single step it takes to get your AIX up and running at this low price. Let's just cover a couple of terms before we get started. PowerVS is the Power Virtual Server. It's part of IBM Cloud. In this, they offer something called a Virtual Server Instance, or a VSI. Now, this is exactly the same thing as a virtual machine, so I'm not quite sure why there's been a reinvention of that term, and is what us old people called a LPAR, or Logical Partition. Tiny AIX VSI really is this inexpensive. £2 a day, or $3 a day, or €3 a day. And if you're not using one of those currencies, then you probably know a rate you could use to work it out in your home currency. So why would you actually want a tiny copy of AIX? Well, it'd be good to actually try PowerVS itself, and then you can understand what's going on and not be so worried about it, remove that FUD. Well, maybe you want to practice some AIX skills. You've got a bit rusty, or you're a new young person and you'd like to give AIX a try and learn some skills and put that on your CV. Maybe you just want to try some applications, test that they work okay on AIX. Maybe you're a developer, you want access to compilers to compile your code and produce applications for distribution. Maybe you just want some experiments to try some features of AIX. Make sure you understand them before you put them into production. And it's quick. In actual fact, it's quicker to create a VSI on PowerVS than it is actually to create a virtual machine in my computer room. To prepare for this video, I actually went to IBM and created a new account just as a member of the public can, and went through the process to make sure I wasn't avoiding anything. I have our internal IBM account as well, but we don't have to do some of these things. So I actually did it for real. We have to create an account, we have to find PowerVS, we can actually then do a price of a virtual machine, we have to add a credit card, we have to create this thing called a resource. It's very unobvious what that's about. I just call them sort of projects. And then the actual creating of an AIX virtual machine, accessing it and deleting it, very easy bit. That's fairly straightforward once you get through all the others. Finally, we'll end up with a little hint that if you're off in the documentation and you want to get back to your virtual machines, then a quick way of finding the dashboard. As an IBMer, I have access to PowerVS by a slightly strange mechanism. For this video, though, I wanted to log in as a regular member of the public, and during that process, I found sort of 6 little hurdles that I thought, well, I'm not sure about that, but hopefully in this video I'll explain how they're very simple and nothing to worry about. How to create an account on the IBM Cloud service, very simple, nothing to worry about. How to find PowerVS, very easy to get lost, I'll tell you how to do that. There's a tool that will let you price up a tiny AIX virtual machine, or big ones if you want to have a look at the prices. So we'll show you how to do that. You have to add your credit card, and it turns out that's simple and nothing to worry about. You won't be charged anything unless you actually start a virtual machine. Then you have to create this resource. Really confused me. I think of it as a project, a way of grouping virtual machines and getting separate invoices for them. Number 6 are the really easy bits. Creating a virtual machine, accessing the virtual machine, and deleting a virtual machine couldn't be easier. Certainly no hurdle. That's the really easy bit. And that's the bit where you're going to spend most of the time when you're using PowerVS. Also, I found at the end, when I was browsing around all the cloud documentation things, I found, how do I get back to my virtual machines? Well, I got a few little things, tips to tell you how to do that, and you can go back to your virtual machine work. I also found that the documentation inside IBM Cloud, pretty good. Lots of it, and then maybe it's easy to get lost if you're not careful, but it is all there. So we're going to start off, we go to cloud.ibm.com. Really easy. Right, now we'll move that off to the side, and this is the panel you get to when you ask to log in to IBM Cloud. So up here it says create an account. You click on that and you get to here. Nothing particularly scary in here. Email and a password, fair enough. Then I clicked next. It says verify email, and I thought it was asking me for the password again to check I'm typing it correctly, but no, it's actually sent me email, but I didn't twig that. Eventually went to my email and thought, oh, there's a passcode here, and oh, that's for IBM Cloud, and oh, I know what to do with that. I have to put the code in here as a 6-digit number or something like that. Then it asks you for personal information, and I'm a little bit worried about that. How much is there? Well, there's a first name and a last name and what country you're in, so it knows which currency you might want. Not a lot of details and nothing to really worry about. So here we are at hurdle number 2. Where am I meant to go? You could look down these icons on the left. Nothing in here looks like creating a virtual machine for AIX, and a whole bunch of things over here that I've never really heard of. And the trick is you're going to go here for catalog. Spelt wrongly as a British person, but the Americans, they don't know any better, and I can say that because I was born there. Then we're going to find out why you can't find it. The answer is there's 350 products in here, and I took this snapshot 2 weeks ago, and it's probably gone up since. So you're in a very big catalogue of different services and offerings in here, and you're trying to find the one that you want, the PowerVS, Power Virtual Server. So what do? You type in here PowerVS, and it says, no, you should have typed Power Systems Virtual Server, which is not actually the name of the product, but we'll skip over that. We actually got there. If you look on this page for Power, you find all sorts of bizarre things, because you get things like, here's the one we actually want. Here's Paralytics, and here's powerful yet simple software. Over here we've got brings power of location. We've got powered by SendGrid, and I really wish they removed the word power from all the other descriptions unless it was talking about a power computer. But we may fix that, we may not. That's the way it is at the moment. We're going to click on this one to actually go into Power Systems Virtual Server. Right, now we're in the right place. We've already presented now with a load of things going on in here, and I'm going to point out where you want to go next. Right then, so here's number 3. We're looking at pricing. Well, these are the rates down below in here, the number of cents per hour. Now, that's not how I usually buy my computers. You can cut and paste this text and put it into a spreadsheet and then do a sort of calculator to find out how much things cost. And I guess maybe 10,000 people have done that, but we don't provide that with IBM. No, we're going to give you the text. You have seen these prices change. You're usually going down. Over here, we have the quick estimator, as I call it, or estimate cost, as they call it up in here, and we'll look into that now. So when you click on that, you get the details of the data center, the hardware you want, the memory, the storage. We only want one instance to keep the price down, and we calculate the cost, and it tells you how much that is. Now that's all very small in the screen here. I copy them over here. The data center is important. Washington DC and Dallas 12 and 13 are particularly cheap. I switched to London. Well, I might as well have it local, and it was like 10% more. Well, I don't want to spend an extra 20 pence on that. Thank you very much. I'll quite happily work it out of America. Then we need to choose. There's scale out cheap machines and expensive enterprise machines like the E980. So we're going to go for the cheap one. We're going to go for a shared CPU, not a dedicated CPU, so we might be ending up sharing it with some other people using their virtual machines, but that keeps the price down, so we'll go for that. We're going to click on the AIX license. That could be IBM I or Linux. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Then we're going to go for a 1/4 of a CPU. That's enough for learning system admin commands and that things, compiling and testing a program, but it's not really suitable if you want to do some performance work. How fast can you do transactions, for example? You'd want to have multiple number of cores in there. I think it gives you 2 gigabytes of RAM by default. I think that's a bit low for AIX. I want a bit more than that, so then we can cache all the disk access so we can go nice and fast. There's choices of 2 tiers of disks, hard disks or SSD disks. Again, we're going for price reduction right here, so we go for tier 3 disks. Come back to that later. Went for 40 gigabytes of disks as my sort of starter size for my data, which is in addition to the operating system disk. So then I clicked on the cost calculator here for different amounts of CPU, and you can see we can go well below £2 a day, Great British pounds, or sterling as we tend to call it. If you go up to half a CPU, you're just over the £2, and if you go for 1 CPU, you're nearer the £4 per day. So that's going up. The quarter is really quite a good cheap option they've given us. This is under the £2 a day, but there's some tax in there, and don't forget about discounts. First of all, note that you're not charged anything at all until you start your VSI, your virtual machine. When you create the virtual machine, it'll actually automatically start it. So that's the trigger point where you actually start getting charged. And you're not charged on a daily basis, you're charged on an hourly basis. So if it's £2 a day and you only use it for 6 hours, well, that's only 50 pence in the cost. So it's even cheaper than you might think. When you shut down the virtual machine, you are still charged. Now, this is because these are enterprise virtual machines in here. While your virtual machine still exists, they reserve your CPU memory and disk space so that you can start it up whenever you like. If you want to stop being charged, then you have to actually delete your virtual machine, and then it stops charging you for that virtual machine. You could disconnect the disk and just keep the disk if you wanted to. That reduces the price down to a number of pennies per day, really. Right, back to our screen that we were at. It says up here, upgrade to pay-as-you-go account, and you receive $200 credit. Well, that means give us your credit card or you can't go any further, is what that actually boils down to. Which is fair enough, because the Power machines are more expensive than your Intel because they're so much faster, and they actually want you to agree to pay them some money before you start using these expensive resources. So if you click on the upgrade to pay-as-you-go, you get unlock the full catalog, which is not what they called it, but there we go. It says it up the top in here. What does it want you to give it to allow you to go to pay-as-you-go? First name, last name, I already got that. Lines and of your address, your country, city, and your postcode, and then your phone number. I was thinking about phone number, but actually if something went horribly wrong, they could phone me up, so that's quite a good thing to put in. Then it has your credit card numbers, the usual suspects in there, expiration and security code, and what currency you'd like to be billed in. Well, I'm British, so Great British pounds sound good to me, except and when you've filled all the things in, you can click on the next. And you get to a page like this that says these is your details, confirm that's right, and you click done, and that's it. You now have a credit card pay-as-you-go service of which you're being charged nothing whatsoever. Little note at the top in here, that $200 expires in 1 month. Didn't tell you that until after you've actually put your credit card in, and I can't find a way of that using that credit to pay for PowerVS. I think, and I am guessing, that $200 is for the software services and all those other things available in IBM Cloud, not for the actual virtual machines. If I've got that wrong, or you know how to do that, do get in touch. I'd love to know. Just a little warning, IBM Cloud may run a credit check when you put your credit card in. Now, I don't know if they will or if they won't. I actually used another competitor's cloud service, and I put in my credit card and hit the go button, and my wife, who's downstairs, I was working at home, said, "What the heck's this?" The bank had sent her details of saying, "Is this you or is this fraud going on?" Because it had a credit check from a cloud service, and that's not the sort of things we bought in the past. They thought this was out of character. No, I told my wife that yeah, that's all okay, and I'm not going to spend a fortune. And so she cleared okay and went through. Now, IBM may or may not do that, but if it happens, well, you now know what's going on, and this isn't anything particularly to worry about. And within the first 2 days, I actually got 3 emails from IBM. They're not swamping me with junk mail. It said, welcome to IBM Cloud, welcome to the pay-as-you-go service, and why don't you start a virtual machine? The 3 emails I got. Again, nothing to worry about. Right, so we're back to the Power Systems virtual server page, and up the top we had the cost estimator over in here. These are the prices down in here, and we had to select the location. And we had to do that early on in the process because that affects the prices. And then we can go back now to actually use it. In June 2021, there's 15 data centers in 7 countries to actually choose from out of that list. So you choose that one up the top, and you may not think about doing that when you've got to this point. So we're at hurdle number 5 already. We need to configure this thing called a resource, and I call them projects. Now, if you're a massive organization, you don't want to have one IBM Cloud service and all the things that you're buying come as one bill at the end of the day. You'd probably want it broken out into different projects. Maybe this is the human resources database, and over here is a test dev systems and what have you, maybe for different geographies or parts of particular particular projects, you'd actually like separate bill for each of those, and you may actually have negotiated different discount rates, for example, for those different projects. So down in here, you need to put in the name of your project, which you might call First Try or something, and then after you've selected which data center you want it in, then you hit the create button. It will go off for about a minute, then come back. I think it's creating the invoice and accounting structures for billing you later on. So here we have the brunch project, if you like. I just hit create once without changing the name, and you get this as a default. It's Power System Virtual Server, a number and a letter in here. You can actually go over to the right in here and rename that if you want to. Once you have a project, you click on the one you want, and you get to this panel, which is for your personal virtual server instance, your VSIs. And of course, when you start off, there's nothing in here. Here's one that I sort of created earlier, and so you get a line in here saying your IP address, what it is, how big it is, and active. It goes through a series of different states as it starts up and goes. So let's create that create instance, your VSI. Ask you questions which are very, very similar to the ones that were in that cost estimator. So we have to give it a name. We only want one. We would ignore VM pinning. We would want to be moved to a different machine if a machine had to be taken down for servicing, for example. And as you add things in here, it's adding up the price. This SH key is used if you want to log in directly over the internet into your virtual server. We'll dodge that for now. Then we come down to boot image. Now, down in here, we're going to click on and select AIX, of course, and these are all the different versions of AIX that are readily available. They have images for these. These are typically sitting in 20 gigabyte disks. So your first disk will be that size. You can actually grow the disk later and just use that single disk, or you can add your own disk perhaps for data that you want to keep longer term. When you actually select AIX, you're actually agreeing to pay also for your AIX license. You don't have to any mucking about getting licenses and getting them attached to your virtual machine. Just for completeness, Linux is down in here. We have CentOS and RHEL for SAP. The set there for Red Hat Enterprise Linux are coming soon. Also, IBM I in here, a whole bunch of ranges in here from 7.1 to 7.4, and of course they have lots of extra things added into the operating system. You can click on here to get your licenses. This makes IBM I look a lot more expensive, but then you have a relational database and rational tools and all sorts of other pieces of software that are in with the operating system, and you pay for it directly here and just pay once. Back for AIX then, these are the two sorts of tiers. Tier 1 is faster and Tier 3 is slower. These is SSD disks and brown spinning disks. They're actually in a disk subsystem which has a great big cache on the front of it, so when we write to the disks, it doesn't actually have to hit the brown spinning disks. It will be put into the cache. And AIX will cache a lot of your disk I/O, so unless your first project's going to be running a relational database as fast as you possibly can, you'll find that Tier 3 disks are more than ample and a bit cheaper, so we'll go for that one. Machine type, S922 instead of the E980 because it's cheaper. Then we're going to switch from dedicated to shared uncapped. That is cheaper, and if other people aren't using their entitlement, we can actually get a speed boost off the back of that by being uncapped. Then we're going to select how many cores we want. The default, I think, was half a one. You can go down to a quarter of a one. Again, that keeps the price down. And 4 gigabytes of memory. Yeah, the 2 gigabytes is the default. So I thought that was a little bit low. This is the extra disk. So we'll have 20 gigabyte disk with the operating system, and here was me selecting an extra 40 gigabytes of disk space. Notice that's something I learned along the way. I thought HDisk0 would be a good name for a disk. It's actually going to be HDisk1 because the image for the operating system is going to be HDisk0. And this name has to be unique across all your projects. So I now put in the virtual machine name dash HDisk0. So making a sort of obvious way of tracking down my disks. Then you have to say whether you want a public network or not. This will allow you to log in over the cloud. Alternatively, you could name a private network and get a connection straight into your computer room so your cloud VM looks like it's in your computer room on that particular network. A little bit extra cost for that. So we'll click on the public network. Then we'll go down and we'll look down here and it says £52. Oh, hang on, if you do the maths, times it by 12 and divided by 350, that's £1.73. So this is a slightly different combination to the maths we were looking at earlier. I think I'm in a different computer room, and this includes the network interface. Click on the terms and conditions, and then click on the create instance. It will create your virtual machine, your VSI, and immediately start it, and you are being charged from that point. How long does it take to actually start? Well, I've seen that varying quite a bit, but don't hold your breath, it will be there in a few minutes. For me, first of all, it allocates the network, then it allocates the disk space, the extra disk space, then it does everything else. And you'll see on the main panel, back to where we were, this is the brunch project and the virtual machine instances in there. There's only one. This is a little bit later, when active, so it says building, warning. This means that it's still trying to connect to the HMC for your dynamic LPARs and those sorts of operations, and then it will go active. When it's in the warning state, you can probably log into it. It hasn't connected with RMC connection to the HMC, but you can still log into it well into that. And I find that I have to update my browser to get the warning to change to active when it actually happens a couple of minutes later. If you actually shut down your virtual machine, it goes into the shut-off status. So eventually here you are, you have your virtual machine, your VSA running, it's active, but how do you do anything? Well, you can't do anything unless you notice the dot over here, and I tend to put a bigger button on that one, because if you click on there, you get a pop-down menu, OS shutdown, that's the polite shutdown. You ask the operating system to do it, and it will do it. The immediate shut D is a shutdown. That's more like a halt minus Q. As fast as possible, shut you down. You may have to recover your file systems if it was busy at the time. Restart's obviously a shutdown and start it back up again. Then we have the open console, and this is how you get onto the master console, log in as root and start using AIX itself. We'll come back to that in a second. If you slide down to the bottom one, it comes up in bright red, and this is how you delete your virtual machine, your VSI. And this is the way you actually remove the charges. If you hit the shutdown and you actually watch it shut down and disappear, then you know you're not being charged for it anymore. It does actually pop up a little panel that says, do you also want to delete the disks? Which is a good catch. If you remove the virtual machine but keep the disk, then the charge for a disk is very, very low. We're talking about a few pennies per day. And so a good way of saving the data, you could create another virtual machine and then attach this disk to it and get back access to your data. If you do some little fiddling about, you could make that disk that you saved the boot disk for this new virtual machine, and then it would boot up AIX and carry on as you might expect. If you click on and your browser opens a new window, hit return, and then you can add in root to the login prompt. There's no password, so you're in to the master console for your virtual machine. And then there's all sorts of things you can do. You can do anything you like, right? So OS level minus S, that tells you that it was the operating system you selected. And this is a pretty recent version of AIX 7.2 TL5. On the top right, this is N1, and I just wanted to find something to say about it. Of course, it's only got a single user. You can see it's using 7 thousandths of a CPU core, just ticking over. The open source toolbox for AIX is already set up and running, and Yum is available. So you can run the Yum install Python 3.ppc, and it will just install all Python 3 and all the prerequisites for you. And you got your compilers and all. There's 200 or 300 tools in here that you can just install it literally in seconds with the prerequisites. Of course, we've got Smitty in here to do most of the work. Now, for example, just checking how the network was set up. Finally, one little point, this is like my hurdle number 7, is if you've gone into here, I mean looking at invoices, for example, and I think, well, that's all very well, I'm not being charged at the moment, it's good, and I want to go and find my virtual machines again. How do I do that? Well, you could go back up the top with catalog and things like that, or you can go up to the top left here, this little stack of plates next to the IBM Cloud. When you click on that, you'll get this listed down in here. This is the resource list, and you end up back here. Here in the resource list, you click on your project, and here's your list of virtual machines or virtual server instances. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you've learned something and found that interesting. The next in my PowerVS video series, we'll do the similar sorts of operation at the second half of this video, but we'll actually do it live, hands-on, working with your AIX, logging in and seeing what it's like setting it up. Thank you for watching.